Well, hello and welcome to this edition of Social Media Myths Busted. I'm Laura Rubenstein, your host today, and I have a very special guest with me today is Stephanie Gunning. She's an author and a publishing consultant, and I want to have her say hi.
Hello, hello.
So tell us about you, who you are. Tell us about your vision and what you do in the world.
I am a publishing consultant, an editor, a writer. I have had I think it's, I never know the years actually. When I got out of college, I went right into publishing. So this is like 28 years ago, something like that. And I have just been going full bore since then. I was an in-house editor. I was a senior editor. Had some good successes with books in the category of self-help and spirituality and health, particularly alternative health. And then I flipped sides of the table, and I started working as a consultant to some literary agents and to some authors. And then I continued by becoming a ghostwriter, and I wrote, I think, about 30 books.
Wow.
And I actually lost track, which is such a weird thing to say, but it's true. And now I have my own company called Lincoln Square Books, where I help independent authors to publish their books.
Well, great. So what is your vision and your passion around writing and publishing and books?
Well, I think there's never been a better era in which an author could be writing. With all the technology and the platforms and the social networks, we've really been liberated. And, basically the sky is the limit. Now, that also poses the obstacle of if you're incompetent, you're going to be really incompetent. So there's kind of levels and levels. And, for me, that's an exciting adventure. So learning about other people's businesses, learning about my own business, it's a fun adventure. That's all I have to say.
Great.
So my vision, let me. Yeah.
Good. Well, let me ask you this. Tell us about your journey with social media, since social media is so powerful in the publishing or as an author. And did you hate it or love it initially? Where did you begin, and what has your journey been?
Well, I didn't really understand it very much at the beginning. The first person who ever sent me an invitation to connect was my stepbrother, who sent me one to connect on LinkedIn, and I thought it was some kind of pyramid scheme he was trying to get me involved in. So I was very suspicious, and I didn't join it for over 2 years after that. By then, Facebook had been introduced, and I joined that. And I connected with some old friends that I hadn't seen in a while, but I still didn't really see it as a leveraging opportunity for my company. Then I got more seriously interested in LinkedIn because of the business connections that it brought me and the possibility to quickly connect with colleagues and make joint ventures and find skilled people to work with and for. Potential clients, because I'm a publishing consultant, so I work for people. So I want to get hired by really successful people. Let me just be very frank about that. So if you need me, here I am. And LinkedIn at the time was connected to Twitter. They were sort of a combined platform, and it was only about a year or two ago that LinkedIn started upgrading its systems, and they sort of severed that connection. But by then, I finally had bought a smartphone, at which point it was all Twitter all day long, all the time for me. So I love Twitter, for myriads of reasons.
So tell us, in what ways has social media helped your success?
Well, I use it, interestingly, to find information. I use it mostly for research. I have found clients through social networking. Sometimes it's what I call moving energy. It's kind of a feng shui idea. in that, if you move things around, you can change the conditions in your environment. And so sometimes I've observed that if I just announce things, very simple things, a free webinar, it could be, commenting on somebody's book, it could anything like that. Just if I'm participating in the public sphere in any way, through my expertise. Like a day or two later, somebody will pop up out of the blue with a spectacular project I'm very interested in. And I don't really know if the two things are causally linked, but they feel energetically linked.
Gotcha. So you put the energy out there and it comes back to you.
Just moving the energy around. You can feel when it gets a little stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to social media, what myths do you feel that people buy into that prevent them from participating in a way that adds value to their lives and to their businesses?
The biggest myth is that it takes a lot of time. You can spend hours and hours hanging out on any of the social networks and become thoroughly enraptured with that. And go into kind of a tunnel vision and get just absolutely distracted from doing your writing. However, you can also make a really good plan for yourself and then just follow it in like 10 or 15 minutes a day, and then set aside a longer stretch of time to do a little bit more substantive content creation. And so it's really, for me, that's all about planning, with a little bit of sporadic, little dives in during the day at intervals,
Yeah, and I agree. If you plan it right, 10 to 15 minutes a day can be your social media plan. It can work really well for you. So tell us, what is your favorite network and what do you do for those 10 minutes a day?
Okay, well, so as I said, I go on Twitter mainly. I usually check into Twitter and Facebook every day, and I really do intend to be on LinkedIn more, but usually go into LinkedIn more when I'm planning a launch of something. So what I do on Twitter is I just keep my smartphone next to me all day long because sometimes my clients need to text me a quick question, or I just need to hop on the phone with somebody. So while I'm on the phone, I'll just quickly check in, and when I'm on my computer too, I'll just keep it open in the background, and then I'll go in and I'll see if there's anything that somebody on one of my lists is doing. So I have about 26,000 or 27,000 followers right now, and I have created about 30 or so lists, and I subscribe to some other lists that other people have created, which enabled me to follow, for instance, independent bookstores, publishing, people who are experts in digital publishing. I follow all my clients, anybody I've ever done business with. I also follow kind of marketing thought leaders, like I follow you, and so I'll follow a few people who do tweet chats who are very smart business people, because frankly I'm studying the way they do things. So I always want to emulate, I want to copy the behavior of people who are succeeding and just put my own spin on it and then use it in my business. But I also want to be able to teach my clients how to do it, So sometimes I'll get into a conversation with somebody so the greatest thing about it, though, if I may be so profuse, is that when I'm looking at everybody else's timeline, stream of information, they're giving me these hyperlinks to these articles that if I had been, searching, I would have found them. And that could be, depending on what book I'm working on at the moment, that could be information on neuroscience, on meditation and mindfulness, on nutrition. I'm very fascinated with all kinds of health-related information. But I'm sort of a so the other thing about it is you can niche so narrowly just using these hashtags and keywords that you can make great friends who share your same minute passions. Like my passion for volcanic wine is like a perfect example.
Woohoo.
My passion for space travel is another. I was raised reading science fiction, and in the middle of the night when I can't sleep, I'll be watching I'll be Netflix, is that a verb?
I think you made it up. That's good.
In Google, can we never? I'll be rewatching old episodes of Battlestar Galactica or something.
Right.
So it's like whatever I happen to suddenly become riveted with. So you can dip in for a little while and get out. You don't have to continue to pursue that interest. And then, of course, I'm always, I call it feeding the people. You got to feed the people. So, or the tweeple. I want to share with my social network all the things that I find valuable. Because sure, I'm getting great content, but you know what? Because of the people I know and how well connected I am, some of this stuff is cutting edge. I love to pass this on to people, and it's like there's this big thing going on right now with young Nigerian women being kidnapped and being sold into enslaved, and boom, there's this whole big thing on the social networks, and I'm passionate about that kind of activism, so. Also helps me to keep in touch with that. So I just feel, instead of just sitting here writing all by myself in my little, office, there's this big wide world out there, and I'm connected to it,
Indeed. Well, it's great to hear your journey and how you've taken to Twitter and how you see that a lot of people waste time and they don't have to. Were there any myths you bought into along your way that you had to overcome?
Well, when you're at that beginning state and you don't really understand what the value is. So, for example, 5 years ago, at my last college reunion, that was right when I was hot on Twitter at the beginning. And I literally walked around and I asked everybody, these are college-educated people, top of their profession, right? And I said, are you on Twitter? And literally, I think there was one person who said yes, and everybody else said the same exact thing, and I don't know where this came from. They said, I don't want to tell anybody when I'm going to the bathroom. And I was like, not once has anybody ever in 5 years told me where they were going to the bathroom. It's just such a silly, but I'd like, where did that idea come from? They literally, like 80 people said that to me, that same sentence. And, I was just like, wow, that's really backward thinking. So some of this is generational, and I like to think I'm keeping up, and, so every time you use a new network, you have to begin to kind of grok its reason for being. And how it really fits in people's lives, and you only can really get that by participating, and so even before I begin using tools like these to promote myself, I always go in as a consumer first, and that's actually a great tip for people. If you don't fall in love with it, then doing any kind of marketing on that network is not going to work for you. You have to be in love with what it can do for you, and legitimately. And then you have to understand that the people that you're serving are you. They're not different than you. All your quirky behavior is being mimicked by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. You know, when I'm talking about staying up in the middle of the night watching Netflix, I am not the only person. You know, there are millions of people doing it, which is why it's so popular. But, you know, until recently, I was like, oh, don't tell anyone you watch TV. You know, like, you're supposed to be a smart publisher. No, I watch TV. And I also have real strong opinions about how people like to receive their stories in video form, because I like to receive my stories in video form.
Mm.
You know, so I'm loving sort of the evolution, and you know, and at the same time, I'm always trying to find the next thing, not in a kind of hyperactive, grotesque kind of I have to be first way, but just because I don't want to get bored.
Right.
And I figure if my marketing isn't fresh, then if I'm doing what I did 4 years ago, then that's boring. You know, like, how can it be easier? How can I reach more people, you know, quicker, simpler, while being myself more?
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's a natural byproduct, yeah.
Well, I'm curious to know, was there a tipping point for you or a strategy that you tuned into at some point that helped you really grow? Because I remember when we first met, you were under maybe 4,000 or maybe even less followers on Twitter, and now you have close to 30,000. So was there something that tipped you over into really accelerating that growth?
Yeah, there was actually. And interesting, I remember that visit, and I was in San Diego, and we met in person. And that was actually right after I had begun using Twitter. And honestly, now this is very funny. Was that really 5 years ago? That seems like a long time ago. 4 years, maybe. I don't know. That's so interesting. Maybe I was doing Twitter, but I didn't have a smartphone yet. Anyway, once I got the smartphone, because on that trip,
it was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think so too. But I was already on Twitter. I just wasn't doing it effectively.
Right.
The first one, the other. I only know that because I have another college reunion coming up at the end of the month, so it's 5 years since I asked people that question. On that trip, that was the first time I had a smartphone, because I remember lying on the bed in my hotel room talking to a potential client who wanted to write a book, and she literally just finished it last week. And I signed her up on my smartphone, and I started I had a little bit of time that afternoon, and I started pushing the buttons on Twitter. And I got really interested in watching the notifications and counting, like, how many people could I follow before they would stop me from following anyone more, and really beginning to formulate theories about, do I want to, you know, push it? Do I want to follow other people's followers, you know, who sort of serve, you know, did I want to, like, basically, you know, stalk my competitors? Did I, you know, was it better for me to forward, you know, articles from reporters? You know, I started playing around with it, and I decided that over the next 30 days, I wanted to double my followers. And it was that decision that was the tipping point. And then it's interesting because I got so active that weekend, just playing with it over and over and over. I mean, I had the thing going off. I also didn't realize that I could turn that freaking sound off. So it kept going bing, 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 and everybody was going crazy. They're like, what is going on over there? But I picked up a client from all that activity, because this woman saw me posting these articles, and she happened to need an editor. And she had recently learned a whole strategy, and she shared with me her strategy, which borders on the, you know, against the rules. But it was a very effective strategy for me, and it was very aggressive. And I started doing this kind of cycling thing where if people didn't follow me back, the people I wanted to follow me didn't follow me back within a certain amount of time, I just I unfollowed them because I needed more room. When you get to a higher number, you can go on and on and on. They don't care, but you have to get up to a certain level before they give you freedom.
And that's perfectly fine. I don't think it borders on anything there.
They cut me off one time for cycling too fast.
Okay. Yeah, well, for adding too many people at one time, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they cut me off for a couple of days, and I got the slap on the wrist, and I stopped doing that.
Yeah. If you're doing it so fast, yeah, they don't like that. But yeah, if you do it kind of in a natural way, that's fine. Because, it's true, you want to connect with people and you want to see who's going to connect back. If they're not going to connect back, then move on to the next. But since, they stopped the auto follow back feature, which is a kind of a bummer, so people actually have to manually follow. So it's a bummer in terms of growth, but it's not a bummer in terms of authenticity.
Right. I prefer the authenticity myself. I was never really heavily invested in the automated following thing. Mm-hmm. I've always done it manually because I don't want to follow garbage people.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great. So is there any, somebody gets on and they start, falling in love with it, what piece of advice would you give them of what to do next to get out and play a bigger game and get more involved with it? How do you recommend I think
hashtags is the best thing to do. The way to meet like-minded people is to use keywords and niche into your particular segment of the market. So I'll give you an example. So I'm a publishing consultant. I do editorial work. I consult people. So I started by using the discover symbol, which is the hashtag, and I put in publishing, and then I saw whose name popped up, and the people who were, and then I would go to their timeline, and I would see if they were interesting people to me, and if they were, I followed them, and if they were sort of superstars, I would put them in one of my lists.
Nice.
And to be a superstar is a very subjective thing. It's just it's just superstar to me, it's not, they don't have to be famous. I have many people who are very high value are not famous. To me, high value are not famous. They're experts. They could have a couple of hundred followers. That's not what it's about for me. It's about information. I want to be the one who knows everything, so because I'm a consultant, I need to be able to share that with people. What else? So then you also see what other hashtags are being used. So then you can kind of begin to create your own palette of hashtags. So mine runs to I have 50 hashtags I might cycle through on any given day. For instance, I want to be as transparent as possible about my lifestyle on Twitter because it's that sort of place. So no, not going to the bathroom. But I will say am reading. That's a hashtag. Am editing, that's another one. And so if you're looking for something to read on the weekend, and you put that question out there to people, you're going to get some interesting answers. And and so for instance, if I have a parenting book I'm working on, it's going to be quite different than if I'm working on a spiritual novel, or I don't know, a medical book. I worked on a book with an osteopath, and his hashtags were quite different. The things that got me into that community were very different than what got me into the other one. So I also like to post. When I really want to play guru, I'll post hashtag writing tips. Whether it has an S on the end or not is another question. Sometimes I think one of those hashtags is better than the other. Writing tip versus writing tips. It seems those hashtags stay posted for 4 days. So, you meet a lot of people that way.
And how did you figure out which hashtags to use? Is there a place you went, or just in seeing other people's posts?
I tried them out and saw what happened, you know. And sometimes people invent really ridiculous ones that you know are like not going to go viral, like I'm so mad at my mother I can't believe it's Tuesday. Hashtag.
Yeah.
And okay, that's called self-expression. I'm cool with that. That's fine. But I'm not going to use that tag myself. So it's not gonna take me to a more vertical level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like to think of these things in 3 dimensions actually. So there's the horizontal level and there's the vertical level, and lists are a way to go vertical. By that I mean to drill down into subject matter, but also I love opening up other people's follower lists and finding out who the top 1,000 people on their list is, because those are the people who are most recent followers, which means that in the past month, let's say for the sake of argument, those people keenly were interested in the same subject matter, because they went and searched for it. So I'm always interested in people who are really present. So like the past month, I haven't been very present because I've been working very hard to complete a manuscript, and so now I know I really need to go in and spend some time with people. Otherwise, all the followers will just get so bored with me.
They'll forget about you. We wouldn't want that. No, no. Well, we get that you're busy, but how can people find you and get a hold of you?
You can find me through, actually, you're welcome to follow me on Twitter. I'm at Audacious Editor. That would be a great way. I'm also on Facebook. Stephanie Gunning is my profile. I'm in the process of completing a website called LincolnSquareBooks.com, and that's going to be the place where I have my blog and do a lot of activity. So all of those are great places to reach me.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and insight on social media and the myths and the tips that you gave for overcoming those myths and getting visibility, in particular on Twitter. That was really awesome. Congratulations on all your success. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone.